Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Chargers Talk 4630. Before we get started, I want to ask if you like the content here to please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, I appreciate you so much for that. Now, before we get into my Week 10 football picks, right, I want to take a few minutes to talk about a move the Chargers made yesterday. I mentioned it briefly last night before I went to bed, but I'll give it a few more minutes here because I've seen mixed reactions from fans online. Some people like it, others not so much. So I want to touch on it a little bit. Yesterday was a very, very exciting day around the NFL. Everybody was glued to their phones and TVs, waiting all the way up to the 4 o'clock deadline to see which players were moving, where they were headed, and how these moves was going to reshape their teams for the stretch run. We saw some bold moves out there, right? The Dallas Cowboys going out and getting Quinnen Williams from the Jets, and the Colts making a splash by trading for Sauce Gardner in exchange for 2 first-round picks. There was a whole plethora of deals going down yesterday. Now, as we know, the Chargers didn't have a lot of money to spend and not much draft capital to work with. I've been saying that for weeks, so I wasn't expecting a huge move. But right at the buzzer, just before the deadline hit, they managed to pull off 2 trades, and one in particular stands out. They went out and got offensive tackle Trevor Penning from the New Orleans Saints. So let's talk about that for a minute. The Chargers needed help on the offensive line, plain and simple. You can't just go out and find big-time tackles sitting on the street. So getting Penning for a 2027 sixth-round pick makes sense. Losing Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater was already tough. And with Trey Pipkins and Mekhi Becton in and out of the lineup, the hits just kept coming. When you're down to your 6th and 7th tackles, you got to make a move. I was up late last night and still tired a little bit now watching all access films on Trevor Penning's games that he's played. He's a big body dude, man. At 6'7", 325 pounds, and only 26 years old, when he's healthy, he's nasty and he's physical. He struggled a bit on the edge with his footwork and got a lot of penalties, which is why the Saints slid him inside to guard. And he's looked a whole lot better there. The good thing is he's versatile. He can play multiple positions across the line, and that's something this team desperately needs right now. So look, nobody's trading away a high-level starting tackle in November, right? So for the Chargers to grab a young physical lineman with upside, that's about as good as you can do this time of year. Now, it's up to Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman to scheme around all these injuries. You'll probably see more 2 tight end sets, more max protection looks, running backs chipping off the edge, and moving the pocket to help Justin Herbert stay clean. You can't expect anyone to walk in and play like Alt or Slater, but you can coach your way through it, and that's where Harbaugh and Roman have to get creative. So a smart move at the deadline, not flashy, but necessary. Now we'll see how quickly Penning can get up to speed as the Chargers gear up for the Pittsburgh Steelers this weekend. All right, with that said, it's time to switch gears. Let's get into what you really came for. It's time for my Week 10 football picks. We've got some good matchups this week, a few potential upsets, some big statement games, so let's jump right in. I'm looking at the Ravens and Vikings first. The Ravens defense has given up the 5th most passing yards per game this season, and that could be a real issue against a Vikings offense that features one of the league's best in Justin Jefferson, right? But here's an interesting stat. The Ravens have never won a game in Minnesota. Hard to believe, right? It's still hard to believe for me. But Baltimore looks like they're finding their groove again. They're getting healthy on the defense. And you saw last week against Miami how nasty and physical they can be when they're clicking. Now, Lamar Jackson looks sharp. I mean, he actually looked like vintage Lamar. And when he's in rhythm, this team becomes dangerous really fast. I think that Minnesota's streak finally ends this weekend in Minnesota. I like the Ravens in this one. The next game, the early game, the Falcons at the Colts. This early morning matchup from Germany should be a great game. Now, last week, the Steelers defense gave the Colts all kind of problems. And despite multiple turnovers, Indy kept it close. That tells you just how solid that team really is. But this feels like a Jonathan Taylor kind of game. The Falcons have allowed over 100 yards rushing in 7 of their 8 games this year, and their own run game has been inconsistent at best. If the Colts feed Taylor early and often, they'll control this game. Hey guys, I got to put you on to something I've been checking out. It's a company called Distill Union. They make these slick minimalistic wallets and magnetic key organizers, right? That just makes life easier. And get this, I've got an exclusive 20% off just for you. All you got to do is go to distillunion.com, make your purchase, and don't forget when you check out, use my code ChargeTalk4630. I earn a small commission when you use my code, so when you buy, you're not only supporting me and the show, you're getting the best deal they offer. I expect Indy to respond after last week's disappointing loss to the Steelers. Give me the Colts. Next game I'm looking at is the Patriots and Buccaneers. Both of these defenses are stout against the run, each holding opponents to under 95 rushing yards per game. That means this could turn into a quarterback battle. If New England's going to win, they'll need Drake May to be efficient throwing the ball as well as he has all season. Baker Mayfield, on the other hand, he has thrived when the Bucs have had to air it out. The Bucs are 3-2 when he throws 30 or more times. Tampa Bay's kind of banged up, but they just keep finding ways to win, even without the big offensive numbers. The Patriots defense could make things interesting, but I trust the grit and experience of Tampa Bay to pull it off late. I like the Buccaneers in a close one. The next game up, Rams at 49ers. Now look, Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, Mikael Williams, they're all a sideline, leaving huge holes in that defense. Now the Rams, meanwhile, they're trending upward with 3 straight wins, and there were some questions about whether Puka Nacua is playing, but all reports says he will be back in the lineup Sunday. Even so, San Francisco still plays tough football. They took the first matchup early in the year, and despite the injuries, this feels like one of those weeks where the Niners rally and pull out a statement win. I'm taking the 49ers in a mild upset over the Rams. Now here's where it gets interesting. The Steelers at the Chargers. Pittsburgh's defense was all over Daniel Jones last week. 6 sacks, 3 picks, and they were able to keep the Colts offense off balance all game. The Chargers, with all their injuries, will need to rely on Justin Herbert's arm and Jim Harbaugh's creativity to win this one. Now check this out. The Chargers are actually 1-2 this season when they rush for 150 yards or more. So running it well hasn't exactly been their formula, but I think the key here is protection. If the offensive line can give Herbert just enough time, he can carve up this Steelers secondary that still gave up 349 passing yards last week to Daniel Jones. Now, I know there's no Najee Harris and no Marion Hampton for the Chargers, and that gives the Steelers a window. It's a tough matchup, but I trust Harbaugh's staff to come up with a plan to slow down the blitz and get a huge home win. I'm calling the upset, Chargers over the Steelers. All right, those are my picks for Week 10. And like I always say, anything can happen in this league, but I'm feeling confident about these picks. We got a few favorites, a couple bold calls, and of course, I'm rolling with my Chargers to pull the upset off over the Steelers. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, share the podcast, drop your picks in the comments. Let me know who you're rolling with this weekend. And if you're going to leave comments, make sure you end it by putting hashtag Chargers Talk 4630. It makes it much easier for me to get it no matter what platform you're on. This has been Chargers Talk 4630. I'm your host, Stacy, and until next time, enjoy the games, stay safe, and as always, bolt up.